Welcome to the Goat's Gravy, the ultimate podcast tailored for young professionals navigating the dynamic world of sales and sales leadership. We are here to serve up a blend of mentorship and advice. In each episode, we dive deep into conversations with accomplished leaders and rising stars in the sales industry. Together, we explore their triumphs, challenges, and invaluable experiences. Our goal? To distill their insights into practical lessons that can seamlessly integrate into your own career journey. So whether you're a seasoned sales expert or just starting out, join us as we ladle out wisdom and inspiration, empowering you to excel in the ever-evolving landscape of sales. Onward we go. Hey, good morning, guys.
How's it going, Billy?
Good, dude. How you doing?
You look great.
I like your new glasses.
Thank you. My boss says I can see to the moon with these.
It does look like you're landing airplanes over there. Demetri, how you doing?
We are doing great today. Cannot complain.
Awesome, man. Well, it's great to be back with you all. It's a busy week, and love the weekends because these are really fun. And fellas, I got to tell you, I'm really excited about our guest today. When you hire someone and you watch them grow in their role, and then accelerate their career over time, and then fast forward years later, they become the mentor instead of the mentee. Well, this is one of those special scenarios. Let me talk about Chase Idelman. Born and raised in Dallas, Texas. I hope that's right, Chase. He grew up playing competitive basketball, was going to go play college basketball at Baylor, but an injury changed his plans. However, side note, he can still dunk, which is pretty awesome. More interestingly, I don't know about that, maybe. But more interestingly, he became a pilot at the age of 14, flying his first flight solo at 16 years old. He started his sales career in the medical industry with the largest ophthalmology company in the world, spending 7 years there with multiple promotions. He then entered the world of robotics as a clinical sales representative. And that, Scotty, is where I recruited Chase away to a startup robotic surgery company where I hired him to sell a robotic platform, which he eventually became the rep of the year and a multi-year top performer before being promoted.
Well done, Chase.
Yes, very impressive. After being acquired, we did get acquired, that little scenario. He continued to be a top performer, and then I had the privilege of promoting Chase to a national sales director role with responsibility for building out a new team for a new product launch, which he absolutely crushed. And yeah, it was really fun to watch him grow there. He continued to rise in the organization where he still is today as the global vice president of enabling technologies. He's also an entrepreneur. He's owned his own retail startups. He's a big investor in real estate. And he is a go-to for me for business advice. When Chase is not traveling the globe, he spends his time with his beautiful family, his wife, Marie, his daughter, Riley, and his son, Archer, whose birthday is today. Happy birthday, Archer.
Happy birthday, Archer.
Welcome to the podcast, Chase Idelman.
My goodness, that is quite an introduction. First off, thank you for having me, Billy, as well as Scott and Demetri. Yeah, really excited to get into it today. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, Chase, really appreciate you spending some time with us. I wanted to kick it off. We were doing a little prep yesterday. Yeah. And listening to kind of your thought process, and I think our audience is going to be really excited to hear your message here today. But you use the term grit several times. And as you may know, there's a big podcast around sales around grit, and I keep hearing that word. So my first question is, where did you come up with your own grit? So kind of take us back to the day. So Billy mentioned a little bit about competitive sports, becoming a pilot. Maybe you can share with us how you developed that and what that has done for you today.
Yeah, awesome. So I don't know if there was one single moment where I said, hey, today I have grit. But if I kind of go all the way back, and there's probably some listeners that can relate to this. At a very young age, 2 years old, my parents divorced. So I grew up in two different households. Very different environments. I had one family that was a set of entrepreneurs, and I had one set of family that were in corporate America. And I remember as a child, even, Thanksgiving's around the corner, of going in holidays and having to go into those different environments and the agility that would require just mentally and emotionally as a kid. And I often credit that as one of the catalyst moments, kind of my introduction to just having to look at my surroundings and adapt to the environment ultimately that I'm in. But over time, I think everybody goes through their own stories of hardships, life lessons, and you only have a couple choices of how you're going to approach it. You can fall or falter, or you can persevere through it. And when I think of the word grit, there's a famous kind of TED Talk with Angela Duckworth, and she also has a book on grit. And I believe she describes it as going through really hard things for very long periods of time. Mm-hmm. And I always love that definition, because I think that if you identify people that are in sales or any working environment that can stay focused and can work through hard things and persevere, typically those people are the ones that are successful.
That's great. I'm a big believer and listener and disciple of Joe Rogan, and he really digs into this. You've got to get through the hard times to be great on the other side. Yeah. So as you look at people that you work with and maybe that you hire, is that something that you really look for? Do you drill in to really understand those challenging times that you reference you went through? I know I've gone through them myself. Is that something that you drill into?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't. Everybody has a different style of like how they interview people, and I've probably hired hundreds of people over the course of my career. My general environment that I try to create, get people comfortable, and I want to hear their story, and I want to hear their examples, very specific cases of like when they persevered, they've demonstrated grit. I've had colleagues who interview very specific type of people. You have to have capital experience. You have to have clinical experience before we get these jobs. As Bill described coming on here, I never would have got my next job if everyone had that mentality. So really, if you kind of break down the behaviors and say, okay, what are some of those really important key elements? Grit, perseverance, it's top of the charts.
And actually, just to touch on that, when I recruited Chase over for this opportunity, it was really interesting because he had some great transferable skill sets that I thought could be applied. But really, for me as a leader, I've always hired off of attributes first over the transferable skills, because skills can be taught. But if someone naturally just has it, you see something in them, right, you can get excited about. That's what I saw with Chase. He didn't fit the mold of what we were recruiting for. And I got a little bit of pressure or pushback from my boss at the time about his background with what we were doing. But sometimes you make bets, right? And for me, is making a bet on someone that I saw something with their attributes, and you fast forward, he was uber successful in that environment because he figured it out. And that's the part. It took a while too, Chase. If you remember, there were some challenging moments for that first year, because it's not easy to sell capital equipment anyways. But Chase just, kept at it and figured out how to do it. And then became one of the best ever at doing it, which is pretty special. Hey, Chase, will you talk about maybe some of well, first of all, let's go back. How'd you decide you wanted to get into sales, and talk us through that first experience of jumping into the selling game?
Yeah. Never thought I'd end up in sales. That was not my direction. So I thought I was going to take over my family's business. Went to Baylor, got my undergrad in business, marketing and entrepreneurship, double majors, got my MBA in marketing and logistics. And I learned in my entrepreneurship class, they always said, like, spend about 7 years outside of your family business before you come back, get some skills. It's going to really help. So I was getting out of grad school, and a really good friend of mine was with J&J at the time, and she was in the wound care division. And I remember specifically her talking about her job, and I was like, wow, that sounds so different than all my other friends in Texas going into oil and gas. So I knew somebody at Alcon, which is that large ophthalmology company you referenced earlier, and they essentially just opened the door and got me some interviews. Quickly, I got a whole bunch of no's, and they're like, hey, you're not ready for a full-time position. You have no experience. You're super shy. You're kind of awkward, a little quirky. I don't know if you're a good fit for it. So they said, hey,
I disagree with that, by the way.
So fun fact, I've told you this before. I was voted the second shyest kid in my high school. Very much an introvert, not an extroverted guy. So they said, hey, we'll take a flyer on you, though. We have this new role that we're going to call a floater. We're going to pay you $40,000 a year. You're going to go fill in for people on short-term disability. So we have someone that's going out on maternity leave in Atlanta. We're going to put you up in a residence inn. This could be 1 month. It could be 6 months. We don't know. And good luck. So that's really how I got started. And the first moment that I feel like I had something, I was at this pediatric conference, and there was this regional director that was there. And again, shy, introverted. I remember so vividly going, you know what? I'm just going to have to go get out of the booth and start shaking customers' hands. And even today, that's not my personality. I don't enjoy doing that. But I knew
nor does he like hugging. And I used to give him hugs and be so uncomfortable.
Yeah. Facts. So I caught her eye and I stayed connected with her, and ultimately ended up earning a full-time spot in Austin, Texas. So relocated from Atlanta to Austin. And then, it was off and running at that point.
And Chase, you stayed there for 7 years for that first role, which again, not everybody does. Typically, you see people get that first sales experience, maybe a year, 2 years, move on. Why did you stay so long? And maybe talk about some of those early adversities you faced, but then you ultimately, got promoted and got moved up.
Yeah, so there was a lot happening in the environment when I was there. Alcon was originally owned by Nestle, and then they sold them off to Novartis. So we went through that transition in my time. At its core, I was pharmaceutical sales and ophthalmology, but I was calling on pediatricians. I was calling on family practice. And I love the company. It was voted multiple times over as one of the best companies to work for. And here's what Alcon did for me. And very sincerely, they were one of the best in my time experience in terms of teaching the foundation, the building blocks of how to go out there and sell. And not everyone does that. I don't think medical device, quite frankly, does it great. Pharmaceuticals, it's hard. So you have to be very excellent with being able to create trust quickly, getting past the gatekeeper, asking the right questions, creating value beyond just dropping off samples or buying a staff a lunch, and then ultimately moving the behavior. That's not easy when you're not living in the OR like you do in med device. So I'm incredibly grateful to the foundation, not only of teaching me sales, but I had 3 leadership positions there, and their leadership development program is best in class. And I think really got me started in the right way. So the people and the company is why I stayed so long.
Yeah. Chase, can you take us back to that? Because I find it really interesting. Shy, not outgoing, didn't think you were going to be in sales. Yeah. So a lot of our audience, they may be in college, they may be thinking about internships, they may be looking at that first gig, and they might not think they're cut out for sales. But I think you're describing some attributes. You kind of say, all right, what do salespeople like? They might be like Billy. They're through the roof with energy. They can ask anyone anything. They hug everyone on the planet. Like, that's Billy Shaw.
That's right.
You have been super successful, having just a different demeanor, maybe growing into something else. But my question is really, how should our audience be thinking about that? If they're in college, thinking about they may want to do sales, what are some of the attributes that you think could be successful that aren't maybe Billy Shaw?
Why do you got to keep bringing me into this?
Because you're the poster boy.
I don't know what that means.
I get it. Scott's onto something. So look, I think the first thing is get rid of the word sales. Okay. When you're in 4th grade, as an example, and your 4th grade teacher says, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? No one says sales. They say, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a fireman. But the image that sales, I think especially people in college, immediately gravitates to used car salesmen. And that's not the case. It's a bad representation. When you get into it, really what you're doing is you're developing partnerships in a very deep and substantial way. And you're figuring out what's important to a client, customer, value to a patient. And you're trying to translate that through a product or service. And there's tremendous value in that. And for people that want to go and help the world in a big way. I'll give you a quick example. I've been on this run lately of hiring PTs on my team, physical therapists. Now, PT these days, you're going to go through, and you're going to go all the way through essentially your doctorate, just about. I mean, it's a high level of education to get through it, and tons of value and impacting patients in a meaningful way. But what I've liked about some of that have recently gravitated to our team is they're like, man, we can impact 50,000 patients this year. Like the scale becomes different. So I think what to look at, which was your question, is really what do you want to do day to day when you wake up and put your pants on? Like, do you want to go out? Do you want to go sit in an office? There's nothing wrong with that. Do you want to go out and get uncomfortable and try to move past the gatekeeper? But if you do get excited and you're like, hey, look, I can build unique partnerships. I can grow people's programs. I can advance the space of healthcare. It's worth exploring.
Sure.
And the best way to do it is get exposure. Go see a day in the life of someone that does it. Ask to shadow someone. Get that experience. And that's going to be more telling than anything I could articulate to you on a podcast.
Yeah.
Right.
Really well said, Chase. Maybe going back to your early development, did you seek out a mentor? Was there one person that had a really big influence on your early career? Or is there someone that just took you under their wing? But maybe walk us through how you kind of learned more about yourself and built that confidence that you could go out and be successful as a seller.
Yeah. So I mentioned I'm quirky with a lot. I've always been weird about the word mentor because it's thrown out so loosely. And to me, a mentor is a very formalized relationship. It feels very formal. But I think the root of what people mean by it is much more informal in nature. I've had, without a doubt, wonderful guidance and careers, counselors, sponsors in my life. And I would not be here where I'm at with people like you. But there are a handful that jump out. And I often joke with my friends, I'm like, I really like having a leader for about 2.5 years. And my job in that 2.5 years is to be a thief and steal as much information from them as possible about what makes them great and how I can get better in that role. And then honestly, I kind of like moving on to that next leader that I can go and learn from again. First leader I ever had at Alcon, I can tell you exactly what I took away from him is he would fight for me behind scenes. I knew when he was meeting with an executive team that he was guns a-blazing about my brand and about socializing me. And immediately that created a level of trust. My mentor, his name is JR, that's an intuitive. He asks questions that are on a deeper level of just understanding and curiosity than any human I've ever met. And I always learn from him, like, man, I have to be prepared working for him to have a really good, thoughtful, deliberate answer when he starts to inquire. But the beautiful thing about it is he wasn't always trying to make a point. Some people ask questions to make a point. He would sometimes just challenge me, and we'd get 3-level questions in, and he'd go, okay, I agree with you. That's awesome. Like, go forward. And the empowerment was huge. Then you meet someone like Billy, who is just an absolute maverick in so many different ways. I don't know if this is the point. Yeah, no, let me, I don't.
I'm paying him, by the way.
Yeah, no, I don't know if this is the point of the podcast for me to interject how we met story from my side.
No, please do. So, I say go for it.
Yeah, no. So we're in Austin. He comes down. We have that first meeting. You know, I'm working for Intuitive, which is the creme de la creme of robotic companies. And I walk in suited and booted, and I think he's pseudo business casual, maybe wearing Jordans, and he's missing a tooth. and he's just like, dude, why are you all dressed up? I'm like, this is an interview, right? And Scott, as you mentioned, though, like he comes off with such high energy. Yep. The word that I use and that he uses, I think, is infectious positivity. Like there's an impossibility when you're around Bill to walk away and not have a higher degree of energy because of what he's just invested and given in you.
Sure.
Even to the point of how he opens calls. You get on the phone with him, and he is, it doesn't matter if he's having a bad day, if it's 6:00 at night, if it's 4 a.m. in the morning, he is still full throttle. And that leaves an impression. I think that's different. So this is a really long answer to a short question.
No, it's great.
I'm sorry. Yeah. But the answer to
thank
this,
you, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah. No, the answer to it though is I've had a lot of mentors and I wouldn't be where I'm at without it. And I've learned something from everyone, good, bad, sometimes indifferent.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah.
I was just, we had a guest on, Chase, George Shanine, in the past, and he's one of my mentors. And as I hear you talk about the value you get from mentors, I'm going to urge the audience that mentors shouldn't be rigid, right? So George mentors me beyond sales. Like, I've been in sales my whole life. For him and I, we talk a ton about work-life balance, and we help each other through that, because as you rise in the ranks, Chase, like you have, it's always, always, always a question. How do I create better balance? So our listeners, when you talk about a mentor, you have relationships, I'm going to urge you to talk outside of your craft, right? It goes well, well beyond that. And most of the value, at least in my opinion, comes to talking about things about how do you balance things, because everyone's busy, right? And how do you get the kids? And, George and I kind of go on and on about what that plan looks like. But I'm going to urge people, like your relationship with Billy. I know you're both mentors to each other. I'm sure that goes well beyond sales.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So hey, one thing I think would be good to hear is, what was that spark or the catalyst to jump into leadership, and why are you so passionate about leading now?
So started with Alcon. So we're still on that side. I often joke, I got told 7 times no, like, we are not going to hire you for a leadership position before I got my first opportunity. And the reason I continue to fight for it, though, is because I truly enjoy helping people, and I want people around me to grow and to prosper and be the best version of themselves. And I think it's ultimately like, what are you in it for as a reward? What do you want your legacy to be, when you hang this all up at the end of the day? And I felt like my value was greatest applied there. And you go through ups and downs. It's also the hardest part of the job. I've had a really stressful week with people. Like, it's been a hard week.
Yep.
It's probably a mix 4 of us.
Yeah. And that, but at the end of the day, when I reflect and go, man, similar to you, Billy, like, when you introduce someone to sales and you see them elevate to a point where you can, they can be your boss and you would work for them. Mm-hmm. There's just something special about that. It's hard to measure. There's just something really special about it.
Chase, could I ask you a quick question about you? Yeah. You have a passion for helping. You have a passion for coaching. That's what makes you a great leader, right? As you assess yourself, and I'm not suggesting you're saying you're perfect, but that balance between coaching and helping and accountability, because part of our audience here are young leaders and first-time leaders. And I think the natural tendency is to become a super rep, to do everything they can to make that rep happy, right? So as a sales leader, how do you balance making someone happy, coaching, and challenging all at the same time? Any advice for early on leaders as they fall into those 2 traps? Trap 1, Billy, the way I see it, be their best friend. Trap 2, be a super rep.
Yeah. And I think a lot of leaders as well get promoted because they were excellent at their job, and then they move up, and then it's a completely different skill set, and you have to do completely different things. For me, it was trap 3. I don't know if it was 1 or 2. My trap that I fell into as a young, I think it was 27 when I got my first leadership gig, was I came in very rigid, very process oriented, and almost trying to make a name for myself as almost like an authoritative type leader. And it wasn't intentional. Like, I wanted people to see but it was very intense. Over time and multiple teams now, what I've found is I've started to relax more into the position and try to show the team more who I am, what I'm about, my own vulnerabilities, and learn about them, what's important to them, and develop trust. Because without trust, this doesn't go anywhere. So I've had to spend a lot of time, I think, nurturing that side of myself versus just the tendency to run fast.
I love that. That's authentic leadership. I mean, at the end of the day, it's funny. Similar to you, Chase, I went in my first leadership role. I kind of expected everybody to operate the way I operated, and it took another leader pulling me aside, saying, "Dude, you gotta let people kind of do their thing, and you're just gonna have to nurture that and figure it out." And over time, it's kind of what you were saying is you got to play loose. Right. Yeah. And I actually have an opinion on this. I've had leaders tell me you get too close to your people and you got to keep that wall. I just don't believe that myself. I think at the end of the day, you spend as much time with your team as you do your own family. And so I'm a big fan of you got to have a great connection and a great relationship. And all those relationships are different because everybody brings something different to the table. And there's skill sets that my leaders have that are way stronger than mine.
Yep.
And I can learn from them. And you got to have that attitude of continuing to evolve and always learning. And that's what I love about the fact that, early on I was mentoring you, but now we mentor each other. Right. And it's gone beyond just the work environment. It goes to kids and families and things like that. But maybe, hearing your thoughts on coaching and development, and what are some things that you're really intentional about as you're trying to take a young seller that maybe has interest in being a leader, and how do you get them to that next level of starting to lead?
Yeah. So I think there's enormous power. This sounds so simple in just observation. And I say observation from looking around and learning from those that are better at doing things than you are, and being humble enough to say, I can get better and I can apply that. So you need to have some fundamentals. And I think the fundamentals are often skipped these days, but I'm getting old and crotchety, is you look at like genuine curiosity, right? And sounds snappy, buzzword, but are you good at staying inquisitive? Are you good at asking the right questions? And are you using your observation skills to say, I see something in this environment that can make me better. Let me give you an example. I'll make this about you, Bill. So something Billy does that I picked up from him in my early days of selling is he would always take a notepad into an account with a customer, and he would jot down notes. Yep. And I don't know if the dude was drawing dudes.
I was drawing football helmets.
It could have been.
Nedra's hair.
It could have been. So, but the impact that would have to a customer is the customer felt listened to. And so I was in a sales training 2 weeks ago now, and I referenced that story. And I was just saying, we were talking about listening skills, empathetic listening. I was like, hey, I have this mentor, this thing with this notebook. Yeah. We did a role play in the front of the room. And this is a person who's new, first time ever role playing in front of an audience. She grabs, a notebook, and we start going through this role play environment, and she just starts taking notes. And it just looked authentic. But what was fascinating though, is the role play, the person gave her 3 or 4 objections, and she was writing the objections. And so she goes, hey, let me summarize what I just heard from you. I heard these 3 things. She walked it through it, and then she addressed it, and they were on the same page. Yeah. So your question is, what's the advice of like coaching? Observation sounds so evident. The answer though is to look at a different level and observe how the clients are responding to what you see people good doing, and figure out if you can not only apply it, but the discipline to incorporate it over that long period of time. And that's the last thing. Is it's one thing to observe it, but can you actually incorporate it into your day-to-day mechanisms? Sure. That's where it gets hard.
Yeah. There's one more thing I just want to bring up. Yesterday, you made a comment about the power of patience. Yeah. Right. And I'll tell you my own story. One of my biggest regrets of my career was I was so focused on getting promoted and taking that next role that I sacrificed everything. I moved my family, across the Midwest. We moved to Chicago. We had a great network where we were. I was doing awesome where I was, but I was so eager and so, so anxious about, can I take that next role? And it was a regret for a long time, just because what I put my family, through for my own kind of selfish ambition. Looking back, it was the right decision, and it's been great for our family since. But there's moments where that was really, really tough and challenging me. And I actually just had one of these conversations with someone yesterday who has only been on board with us for a year, but really wants that next role. And there's value to staying in the pocket and becoming a peak performer at what you're doing and learning more. And so maybe just share kind of your thoughts around that comment of power of patience.
Yeah, there was good context you shared, because I was very similar where as a young leader, very ambitious, I always wanted what's next, like what's around the corner. And sometimes that starts to dominate the narrative in your head more than, hey, how can I become masterful in execution at my current capabilities? How can I go diversify my scope of experience? How can I go lead my peers and new hires in a meaningful way? And how can you pick the right opportunities? The risk of when you get eager and your ambitions start to dominate that narrative in your head is you often take jumps that may not be right or are too soon or you're not ready for. And it was one of the hardest things for me is to say, stay patient. And honestly, it's still a lesson today, even where I'm currently at is the power of patience and saying, okay, like, you have a lot of problems to solve here, a lot of good that you can do here. Like, just be patient.
Yeah. I just wanted to double click on something that you said about the curiosity piece, Chase.
Double click. Yeah. Is that a new?
Double click. Yeah. It's a tech term you wouldn't understand. So someone said this, I don't know if it was Chase, if it was on a podcast, or it could have been one of our friends, around genuine curiosity. So when you meet someone for the first time,
that's all he's been talking about. Are you not in this podcast?
Just listen up for a second, for a change. Sorry. Be interested, not interesting. That is something that I talk about a ton, right? Because you're customer facing. Do you want to be this interesting guy that tells you about what he did that weekend and about his kids, all of which are relevant, but how interested are you? Right. And I think about that quite a bit as I meet someone for the first time, or it could be in our friend network and we're saying, hey, what do you think about this couple? Or what do you think? Should we do something more with them over time? I always think back to, is there mutual interest versus just listening to someone talk is so annoying about them. And people do it all the time. And I don't even think they realize it. Right. So you talk about transferring skill sets. Would you be a good salesperson? Is sales in your DNA? But it goes back, Billy. I keep thinking about it. Are you interested or interesting? And I always try to, have myself come back to that and kind of, self-reflect. So I loved your comment there, Chase, about the genuine curiosity. And that just kind of clicked in my head.
Yeah. Yeah. Well stated.
Well, even as a leader though, right? Yeah. It's also, it's very important as a seller, right? You got to go in, to Chase's point, that genuine curiosity is not asking 2 or 3 surface level questions, but really starting to go deeper. And if you're really listening to the customer, and the easiest thing is just ask them, can you elaborate, or why? Why is that important to you, right? Those are the basic things. But as a leader, it's the same thing. I've had leaders that just talk to me, or talk over me, like, constantly. And it's one direction, right? And I think as a leader, sometimes we have a lot to say. We also, to your power of patience comment, I think that also applies to leadership. When you're on the phone sometimes with someone on your team, it's easy for us to jump to solution mode. And we're busy. We want to move fast, right? You're just trying to move on, get to your next call. But staying in the pocket and really digging in, and then asking them, what do you think we should do first, right? Yeah. And let them use their brain. I think those are all lessons that are really important. But giving them the opportunity to share their thoughts and talk and asking the right questions, even as a leader, because I don't always have the questions. And often the team comes up with a way better solution than I can.
Yeah.
Well, listen, this has been great. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You got something else?
No, it was just an add-on to that. I think one of the lessons too of leadership that's a constant learning is that self-solutioning as a team. And that only comes by way of being inquisitive, listening, asking their needs, letting them problem solve. And then also knowing when it's time for you to step up and make decisions and be decisive with it. And it's a tightrope you walk on that, because you have to make sure the team's empowered, but sometimes they're looking for that decision, and you have to throw the gavel down and say, this is the direction that we're going. But you only get there by being inquisitive.
Yeah. And the patience piece, Chase, when you're talking about, we have young leaders here as listeners. I've found, I don't know what you guys think, but you're talking about being patient, the power of patience. But as a leader, can you give, say, your star sales rep that has, a plan to do more? What can you give them to give them at bats? I've been a huge fan of how do you scale an organization? You don't need a VP title to lead.
That's right.
Right. So, all right, run a meeting, run with a certain concept that you're trying to develop and own that. Because I always tell people that when you're in that interview, they're going to ask you one question, or else, this is at least what I ask. Give me an example of a program that you've run start to finish and give me the metrics behind it. So without us as VPs or leaders of people giving them the opportunity to stay in the pocket, Billy, as you said, and be patient, well, you as a leader need to give them those opportunities, right? And oftentimes it's, where's the number? Where's linearity? What's your percentage of goal? And you're just hounding them instead of the development piece, which will allow them to be patient. And I think you drive the retention rate higher when you do that. So I don't know, Chase, if you're doing things like that as well.
Absolutely. And one more on that too. This is just a hot topic with me in the moment is there's a tendency in organizations, I feel like these days, to coach the results, but they sometimes miss coaching the behaviors. And we are a very KPI driven world nowadays. And results are always there. But if you coach the right behaviors and you have the right drive and intent behind that, you can often get to the results that you need. And to me, that's a big lesson of you do want numbers. We get into a numbers driven world, but being patient and being like, okay, what else is behind all of this and how can we get them there?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things. Number one, I want to thank you for just the ability to lead you early on in the career, and the fact that we talked about this going full circle. How do you evaluate, somebody being, having that it factor or being someone that, that is going to take their game to that next level? And you're someone there's no doubt I would work for. You're so intelligent. Number one, but man, you're also really, really calm and collected in the moment. I'm a pretty emotional dude. I have to work at keeping the emotions out of business. But the highs sometimes are high and lows are low, and you're just always steady. And I think your team really feels that about you. But man, you're someone that if you talk to anybody on Chase's team, and that's when you got a great leader. They'll run through fire for them, and they don't want to go anywhere. So I think that's awesome. Hey, we do this little round. Demetri's going to do something we call the quick hits. We just want to get your take on a couple topics, sales related. Anything else you want to share? And then before we hang up, we'll just kind of summarize a couple things if you want to have a final message. So D, you want to take it away?
Yeah, let's do it. You ready, Chase? Let's go. Let's get this quick hits round going.
Yeah, let's go, D.
Let's go. So first topic is networking. Obviously in your career, that's an important part of it. You got to do that right. You can't be weird, right? Let's just start off with that. Can't be weird. So
I think you can be.
Well, you can be if you're
in your own way.
Anyway, in your own way. But can you share a memorable moment that networking kind of opened a door for you?
Yeah, I mean, the moment. So I didn't meet Bill just by us knowing each other. We came from the same company, and the way I met him was through a counterpart that worked with me. He had an experience. I managed a case observation site. He came and observed that case observation site, had a positive experience. We stayed connected, but he knew that I had a passion around entrepreneurship. I had a passion for startups. So literally he called me up one day. It was January. And I remember I was like, why is this guy calling me? And I picked up the phone and he's just like, hey dude, I remember like you're an entrepreneur. You like startups. There's this new company out of Montpellier, France that just created a robot for brain surgery. Do you have any interest? And I was like, I don't know, maybe. And then ultimately though, that conversation led to the introduction with Bill and that we were off and running at that point.
Let's go.
And by the way, I'm not good at networking. I just want to have Bill's master. Like it takes intentionality, and maybe that's the take home from this. To network, you have to be deliberate about it. It's a part-time job to do it well. And creating the relationship outside of work that doesn't feel one-sided, there's artistry in that.
Can I ask you a specific question within that? I know this is quick hit round, so we need to go fast, but as an introvert, like I actually align with that. Like I'm not one to just go to a networking event. That's not my thing. But how as like somebody listening to this as an introvert that's like, okay, I want to do sales, I want to be successful. Like what would you say to them?
You can be successful and give yourself the benefit of the doubt. You don't have to be that person that is going to run up to everybody and hug them. You can still be remarkably successful because introverts, introverts develop relationships too. And they're important to introverts as well. Now you may need a little bit more time on the tail end of the day to collect yourself and need your quiet time, but that's fine. But you can still have a great relationship, develop partnership, grow programs, improve healthcare, and be an introvert. You just have to get I don't have to be the person though that's just running wild, throwing my hand out to everyone. No offense.
All right, let's
from complimenting to slamming.
No, it was subtle, very subtle.
Just kidding.
Let's keep it moving. Prepping for sales calls, big piece of being successful in sales specifically. What's one non-negotiable in your pre-call or pre-meeting prep?
I think it's two. It's research and having a next step for me. I think everything else in the middle can be figured out, but you need to come in there prepared. And the client needs to know that you've done your homework or else you're wasting their time. And you need to have a hypothesis of where you want to take this afterwards. And sometimes that pivots. That's okay. But you need to have a plan directionally of where you want to go, or again, you're wasting their time.
Got it. Cool.
Nice.
Follow up. How soon do you follow up after a meeting?
Depends. I think there's an art in follow-up. I would say it's 55% of the sales continuum. You have a great sales interaction. You're only 45% there. Sometimes it's going to be immediate. Sometimes you need to stage it. Sometimes you need to do more research and create a solution around something, then follow up. It depends on timing. But there's criticality in it.
Got it. Self-development. How do you invest in your own self-development? What's your routine, or what is something you do that keeps you going?
Look, everyone, I hear questions around what's your favorite leadership book? I'm sure you have 7 Habits of Highly Effective Leaders.
Scott was just about to ask that.
Yeah. So I think find something that clicks with you, whether that's watching a TED video, whether that's a podcast, whether that's reading a book. But again, you can have this nugget of information that you're like, oh, that's so powerful. But if you don't apply it, it really falls flat. I'm sorry, I know this is quick hits, but quick example. I'm on a call this last week. I'm triple booked. I go into this ERG thing for Young Professional Networks. I'm probably 20 minutes late. We have a speaker on there. Her name is Jess Ekstrom. She's had 2 books. One of the books was Chasing the Bright Side. She created this business, Headbands for Hope. You buy a headband, she's going to donate one to a child with illness. I'm in there 2 seconds, and I'm like, holy smokes. She's a really good speaker. She's compelling. She's compartmentalizing her thoughts. She has this great story. So I'm listening to that, and I'm like, okay, what can I learn? Let me give you a quick example. I'm trying to contextualize this for you. So I have a rep send me a text in the middle of this and goes, what I took away from this was when she stated, both optimism and anxiety require us to think about something that hasn't happened yet. So if we have the ability to worry about the future, it also means we have the same ability to imagine a better one. So she sends me this text, and this girl, Jess, is just ripping these words of wisdom. And I was like, okay, that's nice, but what do you do with it? So the trick to all this is next time I'm anxious or I'm thinking about something else, I have a choice. I can let it occupy a space in my brain, or I can turn the flip and go, how do I visualize, put this on the vision board, the best possible outcome? Yeah. So whether all those books are there, to me, it's about what can you take away and ultimately apply day to day.
Yeah, dude, really well said. Application is critical. Well, dude, listen, just a couple things, and maybe the final question is, We took away a few things. Obviously, resilience, grit, really, really important. Great messaging there. The power of patience. Thank you for sharing your thoughts there. One of the last thing maybe is you talked about wisdom in the moment, and you get nowhere by yourself, right? Everything is, especially in sales, it's a team sport. I say that all the time. We win together, we lose together, but we gotta go achieve this together. And I think you got to believe in yourself, what you bring to the table, but also the people you're working with every day and what you're representing. But those are some of the takeaways we have. Any final thoughts around those topics, or any final thoughts to just leave with our audience? You're what we call, by the way, the GOAT's Gravy is about the greatest of all time sellers coming on and sharing their secret sauce. That's the gravy. So, but just what's that final thought or thing you want to leave for our listeners?
Yeah, be thoughtful about purpose. And it sounds kind of mushy, but every job, whether it's pharmaceuticals, the med device, robotics, there's a purpose behind it, and be reflective of that. I was lucky enough the other day to interview a patient. We don't always get to do that in our world. And I work currently in the space of epilepsy. And the quick highlights of it, he started having epilepsy when he was 6, but he wasn't diagnosed until 56. So he lived the majority of his life without it. He has had 6 different times he's been airlifted. He has had a flight divert mid-flight and go to a different city in the land because he had a seizure on there. He was in a coma for 3 months. He was given 9 months to live. Ultimately, he had a procedure done, a right lobectomy. He used one of our devices, and the end result, he's been seizure-free. He was an artist, and now he can paint again because he had to give it up for almost a decade of his life. And his wife is in the front audience. I'm interviewing him on stage, and his name was Alan. His wife's name was Nan. I said, "What is Nan meant for you in your journey?" And he started tearing up. I almost started tearing up, and he's just like, "Man, she saved my life." CEOs on the front, 2 feet from me, and everybody's getting misty eyed. And you go, man, some people are going through some really hard stuff, and we have an opportunity to help them. To me, that's my purpose. I look at that story and go, yeah, that's why I get passionate. I get motivated to go help people. Figure that out for yourself.
Yeah.
Love it.
Dude, that's a great finishing message, right? At the end of the day, you got to do what you're passionate about. You got to do it with people that you enjoy being around. And if you have that purpose, whether it's selling or it's leading, whatever it is, right? Let that be your compass. So, dude, it was great seeing you, great spending time with you this morning. And obviously we'll look forward to, we're going to get you back, dude. You had a lot of gold to share today. And as we're learning and stumbling our way through this thing, we're going to want to get you back sometime in the next year or so. So thank you for coming on and being part of this. Very special.
Chase, thanks, my man. Appreciate it. Happy birthday to Archer too.
Enjoy. That's awesome, Archer.
Thanks, fellas. Have a great one. Appreciate y'all having me on. Take care.
Yeah.
You got it. You got it.
Good one. See you, buddy.
And that brings us to the end of another episode of the GOAT's Gravy. We've shared some awesome insights and strategies aimed at enhancing your journey in sales. And the conversation does not have to stop here. So be sure to follow us on social media at the GOAT's Gravy and explore more at thegoatsgravy.com. Your journey towards sales mastery is ongoing, and we're here to support you at every step. So thank you for tuning in today. Stay curious, stay driven, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.